You never forget your first encounter with that neighbor. For the people on Maplewood Lane, that unforgettable presence was Karen Winslow. She had a way of inserting herself into everyone's lives without ever being invited, like an app you can't uninstall. She wasn't just a neighbor. She was the self-appointed enforcer of all things appropriate, armed with her trusty iced coffee in one hand and a clipboard in the other, like a suburban hall monitor. You could be out mowing your lawn, and somehow she'd appear, standing at the edge of your driveway with one eyebrow raised, ready to offer an unsolicited suggestion about your grass height. She didn't own a measuring tape, but if you looked close enough, you'd swear she had laser vision calibrated to detect overgrown lawns and Halloween skeletons before they even hit the ground. That particular October, things started to heat up earlier than usual. It was only the first week of the month when Karen launched her first complaint. It was a Monday, cool, breezy, with the scent of cinnamon and decaying leaves in the air. The kind of morning that practically begged for pumpkins on porches. The Hendersons, a sweet young couple who had moved in just that summer, were more than happy to oblige. They had 2 twin boys, Ben and Eli, who were 7 years old and absolutely obsessed with Halloween. For them, it wasn't about the scary stuff, it was about fun. They'd carefully picked out decorations over the last few weeks, some fake spider webs, a goofy-looking inflatable witch with googly eyes, and a set of jack-o'-lantern lights that twinkled at night. They set it all up over the weekend with the boys proudly placing pumpkins on the steps while giggling and racing each other around the yard. To anyone else, it was adorable. But to Karen, it was a sign of the apocalypse. By mid-morning, she was outside with her arms crossed, standing squarely on the sidewalk in front of the Hendersons' home, staring like she'd just seen a crime scene. She didn't even try to hide, yet her judgment was sharp enough to slice through tempered glass. Within hours, she had written a note. Not a friendly, "Hey, could we talk?" kind of message. No, this was a formal letter, printed and folded into a pristine white envelope. Hand-delivered and taped, yes, taped to their front door. In bold font at the top, it read, "Concerned neighbor feedback, urgent." The note accused the Hendersons of seasonal rushing, visual pollution, and most dramatically, promoting occult imagery in a family-oriented neighborhood. The inflatable witch, Karen wrote, was not suitable for children and a potential spiritual hazard. That's right, a spiritual hazard. As if one flailing witch in a pointy hat could summon dark forces over Maplewood Lane. Word got around fast. The Hendersons didn't say much, they were too polite. But someone saw the note, took a photo, and by the afternoon, it was circulating in the neighborhood Facebook group. Reactions ranged from laughter to mild outrage to speculative betting on how long Karen would take before involving the HOA. Spoiler alert, it was 2 days. She filed an official complaint by Thursday, citing 3 properties with excessively ghoulish decorations. The list included the Johnsons' plastic tombstones and even the Nguyens' tiny ghost lanterns, which barely flickered, but Karen didn't stop at paperwork. On Saturday morning, she approached a group of neighborhood kids who were happily stringing spiderwebs between their porch columns. She didn't yell. Karen never yelled. Her voice was a kind of cold, condescending drizzle. You didn't even notice it was ruining your day until you were already soaked in passive-aggressive shame. No, she said. When I was your age, we focused on fall themes. Pumpkins, scarecrows, not demons. The kids just blinked at her. One brave child offered, "It's a plastic bat, Karen." That didn't go over well. "Well," she snapped, "we all know how the devil starts, with plastic bats." Karen had a reputation, sure, but this year felt different. Her energy was dialed up to 11. She made daily rounds, photographing decorations, posting rants online about neighborhood integrity and how Halloween had become an excuse to glorify darkness under the guise of fun. People mostly ignored her, treating her complaints like background noise. But the tension was there, simmering. Behind closed doors, neighbors swapped stories. Someone recalled the time Karen left a note on their car windshield because of a suspicious bumper sticker. It had said, "Namaste," in bed. Another neighbor claimed she once called animal control because someone had a plastic flamingo dressed as a vampire. No one was sure if that was true, but it sounded like Karen. Still, the Hendersons were the main target that October. As Halloween approached, they quietly refused to back down. They added a few more lights and dressed their boys in matching mummy costumes. The party they threw on Halloween night was a gentle act of defiance. Warm apple cider, pumpkin cupcakes, and a very undemonic piñata shaped like a ghost. Children laughed, parents mingled, and Karen? She stayed inside, her blinds barely cracked, watching like a hawk scorned by the neighborhood it tried to rule. Later that night, someone caught a glimpse of her standing in her front window, arms crossed, eyes narrowed, as a group of children in costume rang her bell. She didn't answer. The lights were off. The door remained shut, and still, not a single soul turned into a demon. Maplewood Lane had faced its share of storms, hail, power outages. Even that one time a raccoon terrorized the trash bins for weeks. But Karen's annual war on Halloween had become its own peculiar tradition, like the grumpy Grinch trying to cancel a holiday no one asked her to attend. The only difference was, the Grinch eventually had a change of heart. Karen? She was just getting started. Halloween came and went like a gust of wind, one filled with giggles, miniature superheroes, and the distant sound of parents telling their kids they could only have 2 pieces of candy tonight. By the time November rolled in, the pumpkins on Maplewood Lane had softened, their carved grins slowly caving in as time and weather took their toll. The ghosts and skeletons were packed away into garages, the inflatable witch deflated with a final dramatic sigh, and the fake spiderwebs were gently tugged down from shrubs and porch lights. Life returned to its usual rhythm, and peace settled over the neighborhood. All except one house, Karen Winslow's house. While the rest of the street seemed content to ease into the warm, cozy glow of late autumn, Karen was already preparing for her personal Super Bowl Christmas, and not the quiet, candlelit, snowy sort of Christmas either. Karen did Christmas like Vegas did billboards, loud, bright, and impossible to ignore. On the morning of November 12th, exactly one day after she posted in the Maplewood Facebook group that she appreciated tasteful restraint during the transition, between holidays, she rolled out her plastic nativity scene and plugged in a pre-lit, pre-assembled tree that reached higher than her front door. Her lawn, which had remained empty and beige all through October, was suddenly a gallery of holiday cheer. Giant candy canes staked into the soil, a grinning snowman family lined up in descending height, and blinking lights wrapped around everything, fence posts, mailbox, even the bird bath. But that was only the beginning. By mid-November, Karen's house was the brightest thing on the street, possibly the town. She installed a life-size sleigh on her roof, complete with animatronic reindeer that bobbed their heads and moved their legs as if in perpetual flight. A massive inflatable Santa stood guard on her lawn, his belly bouncing with every gust of wind. Carol music began to play from speakers hidden in the shrubs, classic, over-cheerful renditions of Jingle Bells and Silent Night that looped on a schedule from 6 p.m. to midnight, every single night. Neighbors were baffled. This was the same woman who had gone into a full moral panic over an inflatable witch, the same woman who had lectured children about bats being gateways to darkness. And now she had turned her home into a blinking shrine to Christmas, before Thanksgiving had even happened. Still, no one said anything. The Hendersons exchanged amused looks. Mr. Johnson quietly shook his head as he passed by on his morning walks. A few neighbors even joked about putting up a few holiday lights themselves to keep up, though no one could truly compete with the sheer volume of Christmas oozing from Karen's yard. December rolled in with its early dusks and chilly mornings, and Karen's lights grew brighter. She added more decorations. A choir of animatronic carolers showed up beside her porch, Her garage door was covered in a magnetic mural of Santa's workshop, and a digital countdown to Christmas sign blinked in the front window. She even added a bubble machine that pumped out artificial snow during the evenings. And when people dared to comment about the volume of the music or the seizure-inducing strobe lights, Karen responded with passive-aggressive social media posts. "Some people just don't appreciate joy," she wrote under a photo of her glittering yard. If a cheerful holiday display offends you, maybe you need to look inward. Christmas Day came and went, then New Year's Eve, then the first week of January. By now, the rest of the neighborhood had taken down their decorations. Lawns returned to normal, porches were swept clean, and string lights were neatly coiled into plastic tubs. But Karen's house? It looked the same. Santa still waved from the lawn. The sleigh was still on the roof. The speakers still played. Music, though mercifully on a lower volume now. The first time someone mentioned it, it was during a neighbor's birthday party in mid-January. "Maybe she's just too busy to take them down," someone offered. "She's retired." Another replied, "What's she busy with?" That was when the jokes began. Friendly at first. A few memes were shared in the Facebook group. One neighbor posted a blurry photo of Karen's still-lit Santa at midnight with the caption, "Never sleeps, never blinks." Then came February. Still, the decorations remained. A few neighbors speculated that perhaps Karen had moved. But no, she was spotted getting her mail, taking her garbage out, even trimming her bushes. She was still around. She just refused to let go of Christmas. Valentine's Day arrived, and the Hendersons, ever the peacemakers with a subtle flair for humor, put up a few tasteful heart lights on their porch. A small Cupid figure held a sign that read, "Love thy neighbor, even if they think it's still December." Karen didn't react, not openly. But her Santa gained a companion, a slightly off-kilter angel figurine holding a banner that read, "Peace on Earth." It was tilted at such an angle it looked more like a threat than a message of goodwill. By March, the whole street was in on the Fio joke. Some started placing decorations from other holidays just to see what would happen. The Johnsons put up a little Easter bunny made out of yarn. The Rodriguezes hung a welcome spring wreath. One family planted tulips right beside their Christmas tree still on the porch. Karen said nothing, but she also changed nothing. By now, Santa's once proud belly had deflated slightly. The reindeer on the roof had started to tilt. The bubble machine hadn't run in weeks. But the lights still came on every evening at dusk, blinking their red and green pattern like a beacon of festive denial. When April arrived, it was clear something had to give. Neighborhood kids began placing bets, real bets, on whether the Santa would last till summer. Someone even made a bracket chart on a dry erase board for Karen's Christmas countdown. Yet even as the sun lingered longer in the sky and people started putting out lawn chairs and planning spring barbecues, Karen's house remained frozen in holiday limbo. Time moved on. She didn't. The most incredible part was that Karen, who had so passionately crusaded against Halloween on the basis of seasonal integrity, was now the one with decorations that had overstayed by 4 entire months. And not a quiet pumpkin on a porch either. No. She had an entire fleet of animated reindeer and a glowing Santa that still blinked well into April. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, and the street, patient as it was, began to quietly prepare for a reckoning. By April 10th, the situation had become too absurd to ignore. The decorations were still up, every last one of them. Santa still waved lazily in the wind. His once rosy cheeks had faded from the sun, and the inflatable angel was now permanently leaning to one side, as if exhausted by months of forced joy. The lights still came on like clockwork each evening, blinking red and green across the now budding trees of Maplewood Lane. It was the 4th month of Karen's Christmas, and what began as an annoying contradiction had slowly turned into a neighborhood-wide inside joke. But jokes can only go so far. It started with one of the younger couples on the street, the Johnsons, who lived 2 houses down from Karen and had grown tired of hearing "Deck the Halls" every single night through their walls. They had a newborn, and that baby had been waking up at odd hours, startled by bursts of loud sleigh bells and high-pitched choruses. At first, the Johnsons assumed Karen would naturally take the decorations down by mid-January. Then they thought, maybe she was traveling or going through something, but by April, they stopped speculating. They were just frustrated. So they started a group text with a few of the more active neighbors. The chat was cheekily titled, Operation Holiday Cheer, but like reasonable. It was mostly a place to vent at first. Screenshots of Karen's Facebook posts from October were recirculated, particularly the one where she referred to Halloween as a toxic glorification of dark forces and insisted, in bold, that decorations should follow the season and come down in a timely fashion. Someone replied to the screenshot with 3 words, pot, meet kettle. The chat grew quickly. People added friends, family, longtime residents. The energy shifted from venting to organizing. A few folks joked about staging an intervention. Others proposed more creative ideas. But it was Mrs. Nguyen, retired teacher, expert gardener, and quiet legend of the block, who suggested what would become the turning point. If she wants to live in Christmas forever, she wrote, why don't we all live in every holiday at once? The idea took root faster than anyone expected. Within hours, plans were in motion. People rummaged through their garages, attics, and basements. Old Halloween boxes were opened. Valentine's decorations were pulled out. Easter baskets, 4th of July flags, and even a few St. Patrick's Day gnomes were gathered. The plan was simple. On Friday night, the entire neighborhood would put up everything they had. All of it. And they did. It started slowly, with the Hendersons placing a plastic skeleton next to their blooming tulips. They dressed him in a pink, heart-covered scarf and perched him on a bench with a chocolate bunny in one hand and a tiny American flag in the other. By sunset, nearly every house had joined in. The Rodriguezes tied Valentine hearts around their scarecrow from last fall. The Wongs inflated a tiny turkey beside a baby Jesus statue. The Carters mounted a blinking jack-o'-lantern above their garage and hung a string of rainbow lights around their mailbox, which had a leprechaun clinging to it like a climber on a summit. The result was chaotic, colorful, and absolutely glorious. Some homes looked like they'd been hit by a time-traveling party planner. It wasn't just decorations. It was an expression of collective exasperation, channeled into the most hilariously over-the-top suburban protest the street had ever seen. And right in the center of it all stood Karen's house, unchanged, still, covered in 4-month-old Christmas gear, suddenly looking less festive and more stagnant. That night, Karen emerged from her front door at 8:03 p.m., wearing her trademark quilted bathrobe and clutching her phone like a judge about to deliver a verdict. She stood at the edge of her lawn, eyes scanning the street, jaw slowly tightening with each turn of her head. "What is this?" she called out, not to anyone in particular. Someone, maybe Mr. Johnson, yelled back from a lawn chair, "Just catching up on all the holidays we missed, Karen." There were muffled chuckles. A few neighbors waved. Karen's face twisted into something halfway between confusion and offense. She took out her phone and began recording. "This is madness," she muttered, as she walked past a Cupid writing. "A fake Easter bunny holding a sparkler. You're mocking me," she added louder, to no one and everyone. But no one stopped her. No one engaged. The protest wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was just there. Happy chaos, a gentle yet undeniable contradiction of everything Karen stood for: control, order, and seasonal correctness. The next morning, her Christmas music didn't play. By Sunday, the Santa was gone. By Monday afternoon, the sleigh on the roof had vanished, the candy canes disappeared, and even the blinking lights had been unplugged. For the first time in 4 months, Karen's house was decoration-free. She didn't say a word. She didn't issue a statement, or post in the Facebook group, or hand-deliver apology letters like she had with her Halloween complaints. She simply removed the evidence and retreated inside. And the neighborhood? They let it go. Slowly, they took down their protest decor. The skeleton returned to its box, the bunny was packed away, and the turkey was stored until November. But something had shifted. There was a new kind of energy in the air, a quiet solidarity that hadn't existed before. People waved more. They chatted longer on sidewalks. A few of them even started planning a block party for Memorial Day, just an excuse to keep the good spirit alive. Karen kept to herself for the most part. Her lawn remained immaculate, her porch undecorated. She still wore her robe and carried her coffee like a badge of honor. But she didn't complain again. Not openly. Not when the Henderson boys chalked cartoon ghosts on the sidewalk. Not when someone put a silly inflatable flamingo up just because. Not even when Mrs. Nguyen planted daffodils in a heart-shaped pattern near the curb. For the first time in years, Karen seemed quiet. Maybe it was resignation, maybe it was reflection, or maybe, just maybe, the great holiday mashup of April had opened a tiny crack in her seasonal fortress. Because sometimes, even the most stubborn people need to be shown, not told, how ridiculous they're being. And Maplewood Lane had done exactly that. With candy hearts, blinking pumpkins, inflatable turkeys, and one very persistent skeleton. Spring settled fully into Maplewood Lane like a long exhale. The dogwoods bloomed, the birds returned with their morning chatter, and neighbors began tending to their gardens with a new sense of camaraderie. The holiday chaos of April faded gently, as all good things do. Decorations were packed away, lawns returned to their peaceful green, and the skeleton that once guarded the Hendersons' yard was finally retired, though Ben and Eli begged to keep him dressed as a lifeguard by the kiddie pool. Still, there was a lightness in the neighborhood, like the kind that follows a summer thunderstorm. People were friendlier. They waved more often, lingered at mailboxes, offered each other seedlings and pie. And perhaps most noticeably, Karen Winslow kept to herself. She still came out each morning at exactly 7:15 to collect her paper, clutching her reusable mug like it contained something far stronger than coffee. She still wore her robe, still trimmed her hedges with surgical precision, and still frowned when someone parked even slightly crooked. But the notes had stopped. The complaints disappeared. The clipboard remained inside, gathering dust, and the Facebook posts became sporadic and oddly polite. Neighbors wondered if she had finally learned her lesson, if the great holiday rebellion had actually humbled her. No one wanted to say it aloud. Superstition, perhaps. But it felt like the street had won something. Not in a mean way, not even in a petty way, but in the kind of way you win when you realize the bully isn't stronger than the group that stands together. And then came June. Maplewood Lane had a long-standing tradition of a summer block party. It had started years ago, organized by a group of parents who wanted a safe, fun event for their kids. It had grown over time into something bigger, a potluck meets festival affair with lawn games, music, sprinklers, and the much-anticipated grilled corn stand run by the Wongs. After the April shenanigans, everyone seemed more enthusiastic than usual about reviving the event. The party was scheduled for the second Saturday in June. Flyers went up, volunteers signed up for tables and tasks, and a few people planned themed games, water balloon tosses, tug of war, a bounce house rented by the Rodriguezes. Even the Hendersons promised a cotton candy machine they found on sale. There was excitement in the air, and then, in the strangest twist no one expected, Karen Winslow signed up to help. She didn't do it loudly. She didn't announce it in a flurry of status updates. Instead, she quietly added her name to the list posted on the community bulletin board beside the neighborhood library box. In neat cursive, she wrote, Karen W., drinks and setup. People didn't know what to make of it. Some speculated she was planning to sabotage the event. Others wondered if she was trying to repair her image after months of holiday warfare. A few thought maybe she was lonely, and this was her clumsy way of reaching out. Regardless of her motive, when the day arrived, Karen was there. She showed up. Early, of course she did, wearing a wide-brimmed straw hat and khakis, her lips pressed into a determined line. She brought 2 full coolers of lemonade and a folding table, which she set up near the playground without a word. For the first half hour, she worked alone, arranging cups in precise rows, wiping down the table surface with antiseptic wipes, and even hand-labeling the drink options with little signs. Then she stood behind the table like a statue and waited, at a pace. First, people were awkward around her. They approached cautiously, unsure if the lemonade came with a side of disapproval. But Karen was civil. She said, "Hello." She smiled, though tightly. She poured drinks without commentary and thanked people when they complimented her lemonade. It was strange, disorienting even. Later in the afternoon, someone dared to ask, "So, no holiday music today?" Karen paused for a beat, then cracked, something resembling a smirk. "I thought I'd give the reindeer a break." People laughed, genuinely. The tension started to melt. And then something truly unthinkable happened. As the sun dipped lower and golden light filtered through the trees, the Henderson twins came tearing across the lawn with face paint smeared across their cheeks and melting popsicles in hand. They nearly collided with Karen's table, skidding to a halt just in time. One of them, Ben, looked up at her and said, "Hey, Miss Karen, you coming to tug of war?" Karen blinked. "Me? Yeah, we're down 1 person. Mr. Johnson has a bad back." She hesitated. Her eyes flicked from the lemonade cups to the dusty patch of grass where half the neighborhood had gathered for the game. They were waving her over, smiling. Without a word, she wiped her hands on her pants, straightened her hat, and followed the boys. Karen Winslow joined Team Red. She dug her heels into the grass and gripped the rope like it owed her money. And when someone yelled, "Go!" she pulled with every ounce of energy in her narrow, determined frame. The rope burned against her palms. Kids screamed in delight. Adults groaned and laughed as they strained. And when Team Red won, barely, Karen threw her arms up in the air and let out a loud, unmistakable laugh. Not a smirk, not a scoff, a real laugh. It was, in every possible way, a victory. Later that night, after the bounce house deflated and the last batch of corn was served, people began packing up. Karen lingered, helping fold chairs and collect trash. No one asked her to. She just did it. As she carried a bundle of empty paper plates toward the trash bins, she passed by Mrs. Nguyen, who gave her a sly little smile. "Nice hat," Mrs. Nguyen said. "You should wear it at Halloween." Karen chuckled. "Only if it doesn't summon the dark forces." They both laughed. Then Karen paused and added, "I may have overreacted. About a few things." Mrs. Nguyen shrugged. "We all do. That's why we have block parties." And with that, the night wound down. By the time the last neighbor disappeared inside, the street was quiet again. The moon rose gently over Maplewood Lane. Porch lights flickered on. A sprinkler hissed somewhere in the distance. And Karen Winslow, the woman who once declared Halloween a threat to decency and left Santa standing on her lawn until Easter, walked back to her house, slowly, calmly, peacefully. There were no notes waiting on her neighbors' doors, no rants, no blinking reindeer, just the memory of a tug-of-war and a shared laugh, and the quiet, unexpected feeling that maybe, just maybe, Karen wasn't so impossible after all.